To set the tone, I'm going to start with a little backstory. I was a somewhat sheltered kid who didn't have a ton of real-world experience. I had my first boyfriend when I was 16. We dated for several months, had a difficult breakup, and I pretty much rebounded to another relationship with a guy who was mentally and physically abusive. He and I dated for over a year, before eventually I finally got up the courage to dump him. However, by that time, I had burned some bridges with my family and friends and moved into an apartment with my equally rebellious cousin. I can't begin to describe how messed up I was emotionally at this point. Looking back on it, it honestly seems like somebody else's life, like I was just a bystander. I made terrible decisions that I would regret and still regret for years to come. Many of those decisions centered around men who I was basically using to make me feel something other than pain and frustration. One of those guys, I'll refer to him as Jay, and ended up being much more than what I had bargained for. By the time he came around, I was starting to come to my senses. By that, I mean I was starting to realize that I was never going to fill that void with these guys. But I was a shy person who had trouble saying no. So when Jay asked if he could spend the night one time, I let him. The next morning, not only was I extremely embarrassed, but also extremely late for work. I had to kick Jay out and take off to my job. All day I found myself angry at the decisions that I made and also what I'd become. I made the decision to not only cut ties with Jay, but all guys for the time being. However, that didn't change the depression that I was still battling. Jay continuously tried to call me and text me, and I ignored him because I was honestly afraid that I wouldn't have the willpower to say no. I kept hoping that he would get the hint. When finally, after 3 or 4 days of non-stop notifications, I stopped hearing from him. I was having a particularly rough day. The following week, when at around 9 p.m., I decided to go for a walk. I posted a status to Facebook, which were song lyrics that I can't exactly remember, but they said something about saving me. As I was walking, I received several calls from Jay in a row. As I had been doing, I kept ignoring them. Then I received a call from my cousin roommate. She was frantic, saying that Jay was outside of our apartment yelling loudly for me to get outside. Our landlord, who lived in the lower apartment, called up to my roommate, complaining. I honestly don't remember how I managed to get back into my apartment without Jay noticing me. I remember that I was standing on our balcony porch, and he was yelling at me as my cousin threatened to call the police. He made all kinds of threats. He threatened to mess with my car. He threatened to set the apartment on fire. He came up to the main entrance of the apartment, banging on the doors while we stayed on the porch, begging for him to leave. As the threats got worse, we locked ourselves inside. I honestly have no idea why we didn't call the police, given that it was now late, and we assumed ourselves to be safe on the 3rd floor. We must have fallen asleep at some point. And when I ultimately woke up at 5 a.m. in the morning for work, Jay was gone. I checked my car, my cousin's car, everything was fine. I blocked Jay's number on my phone. I blocked him on Facebook, leaving my cousin with specific instructions to call the police if he ever came back. I left and headed off to work. I've never heard from Jay again. It's terrifying to think of how that night could have ended differently. It was eye-opening for me, and honestly, it was the final straw in me getting my life back together. For that, even been remembering how scared I was in the moment, I'm thankful. And P.S. to my roommate, SL, cousin, if by some random crazy coincidence you someday hear this, you will likely know that it's me. And if that happens, please know that I'm sorry for every single crappy thing that I put you through at that point. You are an amazing person, and I miss you every day. I guess I'm feeling particularly scared right now and could use a little advice. A few months ago, This guy started showing up at my favorite coffee shop. At first, he seemed nice enough. We had a few casual conversations, but it ended up being clear that he was interested in much more than just being friends. He asked me out a couple of times, and each time I politely declined. I even mentioned that I had a girlfriend, hoping that he'd get the hint. My girlfriend and I have been together for 3 years, and we're really happy together. I thought the guy would respect that, but instead, things took a turn for the worst. After I rejected him for the 3rd time, I started noticing him everywhere. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence. Maybe we just liked the same places. But then it got weird. He'd be at the grocery store when I was shopping, at the park when my girlfriend and I were taking a walk, and even outside of my apartment building. I did my best to just brush it off as paranoia, but a few weeks ago, my girlfriend and I were at the park. It was a beautiful day out, and we were enjoying each other's company and the sunshine. When I saw the same guy off in the distance, my heart immediately sank. I tried to ignore him, and ultimately, he didn't approach us, so I felt like that was a win. But that night, I got a message on Instagram from an obviously fake account. It was a video of us at the park, with a creepy message attached that read, "Cute couple, shame that one of you is with the wrong person." Both me and my girlfriend were freaked out by this. I reported the account and blocked it, but videos kept coming. Different accounts, different angles. Since then, I've stopped going out as much, and when I do, I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched. My girlfriend tries to be strong for the both of us, but I can tell she's scared too. We've talked about moving or calling the police, but we're both unsure about what the next step should be. Has anyone else dealt with something like this? How did you handle it? Any advice on what we should do next? I just want to feel safe again. One commenter shared, "Save screenshots every time he sends you messages. You need evidence of him constantly contacting you and the harassment. Tell people at your job, just in case he figures out where you work. Get cameras and a Ring doorbell in case he finds out exactly where you live. That way, you have evidence of that too." The fact that he's found your Instagram without you giving it to him is very worrying and shows he's willing to put in a lot of effort to get to you. Look up stalking laws where you live as well. Some places have different rules they abide by when handling cases like these. Good luck. People can be absolutely creepy. Hi, I'm a 24-year-old lad living in the UK. I work as a pharmacist at a hospital, and I usually do night shifts. My workplace is just a few lots away from home, so I just walk every night. A few months ago, while I was on my way to work at around midnight, a car stopped in front of me and rolled down his window. The guy inside was wearing a scrub suit, so I'm assuming he's a nurse, had dark hair, was chubby, and was probably around my age. "Hey, where are you heading? Let me drive you to work." I politely declined. The guy looked harmless, and I guess being polite wouldn't hurt. He looked pretty normal, but there's something in his eyes that unsettled me. He didn't go away after that and kept insisting on driving me to work. That's when I snapped and told him that I was waiting for my boyfriend, which isn't true because my boyfriend is in the US, miles away from me. He seemed to believe it and just drove away. Days have passed when I got a chat request. I tried to check the profile and saw that it was the creepy lad offering to ride me to work. How he got my name, I have no idea. I didn't pay his chat any attention and just went on with my pretty busy life. 2 days after that, I got another message from him saying, "You were smiling earlier. You look cute." After reading that message, it felt like I had been splashed with an ice-cold bucket of water. Was he at the hospital? I don't want to know. I told him to stay away from me and fuck off. Days have passed, and I've almost forgotten about this guy when I saw him standing in the hallway looking at me while I was exiting the room doing rounds. He tried to approach, but I beelined my way to the other hallway and went back to the pharmacy. That's when I started freaking out and told my boyfriend. He advised me to just drive to work instead of walking, and I did right after that night. I also blocked the creepy guy to avoid any unwanted future creepy messages. So far, I haven't seen him in months, and I want to keep it that way. So, to the creepy lad who kept on insisting and driving me to work and stalked me at work, let's not meet again.